And with that and our faith, do I believe there are I know, rather, there are chemical things that go on within our bodies, and those can be responses to, let's say down here in this area down here, those may be responses to mild depression or something like that, or what they call situational depression, which almost everybody has at some time or another. Situational, in other words, things are bad right now. And, when Mrs. Davis had cancer, they could have treated me in the hospital for situational depression. I was not a happy camper. I had faith in the Lord, thought everything was going to be, but, I still wasn't happy running around in downtown Houston. Although we eventually got to where we were excited to go for follow-ups because nobody bothers you at the cancer hospital. And so we would go, and it was our way to get away. So anyway, but these chemicals, I mean, if you start down here with this type of depression, what if your body begins to combat that depression, puts out something or decreases in something, etc. And there are medications. I remember I read a man that is noted by many people just because he believes so much in healing. This guy's a heretic. Anyway, I don't know whether he was or not. He saw a lot of people healed. And I was reading one of his books one time, and it was an interesting story because he, as a young person, was saved. And in his salvation, he began to pray for his family members who, one by one, fell before God. And his mother, when she got born from above and really took off after things, at that time was suffering with severe mental problems. It sounded like probably depression. She was suicidal often was suicidal. And she got big time healed. I mean, big time healed. And she just was great from that time on. Now, this is this preacher giving this story. And many years later, after Mom hadn't been depressed for decades, and they were sitting around the table one day. She's old, but she is been walking in the joy of the Lord for many, many years. And he looked at her and said, "Wow, Mom, just think where you are right now. Remember all those years that you suffered dealing with depression and dealing with wanting to kill yourself." And she got mightily offended at him. "How dare you? I've never been that." She couldn't even remember it. It was such a different part of her life, she could not remember. I would never take my life. Well, of course not. She's in the life, and it doesn't cross her mind to take her life. But one of the things that also happened with this guy, that guy right there, is he tells a very interesting story about a man that was in his church and heard the teaching about healing over and over again, and came up to this pastor one day and said, "I've decided I'm healed." Okay, all right. And he said, "I'm about to get off of all my medication." Now, the guy was diabetic, hypertensive, all sorts of things. Well, he did. The preacher was going, "Maybe you need to be careful with this." And he wasn't. And his body he almost died. He wound up in the hospital almost dead. And the pastor went and said, "Look, you've been sick with this stuff for a long time." Now, this kind of gets us to very much back to the question. Will people use the mental illness as the excuse for, "I can't do X, Y, Z"? And they'll do it in their minds, and you better believe they will. This guy was trying to get out of it, but But the problem is that he had so many things physically wrong with him. He did not have the strength. He did not have the faith. And physically he didn't have the strength. And mentally he didn't have the strength. And spiritually he did not have the strength to go, I'm healed. That's a continuum too. You see people that lay hands on folks that God may heal them. Mrs. Davis, we've prayed for people, seen them healed of cancer, all sorts of stuff. But it's not something that we do every day. Now, this guy was not in any condition, even with this pastor believing for him, but he was not in any condition to drop all those medications because his will had been influenced by diagnoses. And guess what? Now, we're going to come back to this here in a second, because this is don't you let me get away without getting back to that. The pastor said, why don't you go off of one of your medications? Let's pick one that's kind of mild, and let's believe that you're healed in that area. And he said in a very few years, the man was completely off medication and was walking in normal health. All the stuff, including the diabetes, was gone. God had healed him. But what happens is, and this is where we're going with this question. This is huge. Identity. This is so big. If you were told as a child, you're sitting there, and Mrs. Davis, we've done the tests on your children here, and your male children are all ADHD, all of them. And the child is sitting there. All of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's kind of asleep over there. Well, oh, yes, it is. Oh, yeah, those are serious personality disorders. We could go on and on. And this is as a psychologist, psychiatrist, you're not supposed to do such things in front of the child. But it's going to get out. Why? Well, they put them over in, what do they call it? Whatever, not the special ed, but the resource class or something like that. And eventually, oh yeah, you're with the dummies. You're ADHD, and pretty soon, when you hear that enough, that's who you become. That becomes your identity. And why would it be so strong that it becomes your identity? Because let's say you're going to play baseball, and the teacher says, okay, you two guys be captains and y'all pick out the team. Now that's not very kind to begin with, and not very smart of the teacher, because the teacher should be doing, I'll divide up who's going to be where. Because as soon as the picking starts, guess who's going to be at the bottom, the last person picked. In fact, they'll be trading, going, well, you got the last pick. The only person is there is that guy. I'll pay you money to take him. Come, please, just take him. Now, the kid, the reason it's that way is because he lacks coordination in that area. But I promise you, he's going to go, because I'm ADHD. Everything, and he's identifying with it now. And it becomes his identity. You run into people that are this way, that have physical or mental disabilities, and they are disabilities. I'm not saying it. I knew a person that was that had cerebral palsy. It affected the lower extremities. They were in a Moby. They could walk a little bit with crutches, but for the most part, they were in a Moby all day. It was pretty funny. On the back of their Moby, and this person was a big Trek fan. On the back, the back seat there, it had a bumper sticker that said warp 6, a speed limit we can live with. Y'all wouldn't get it because they used to have these things out there that said 55 miles an hour, speed limit we can live with. It was terrible because it was all over the country. They required it. Again, why? Because it's more control. We're all going to die. We're all going to die if we don't lower the speed limit down to 55. And after that experiment failed with the libs, they've gone to something else. But it's always about the environment. And guess who was president back then? It certainly wasn't Ronald Reagan. Anyway, it was funny, but I'm telling you, they had a deep identity with their disability. Now, I understand that. You go, well, I'm not going to let it define you. Yes, you are. It's going to define you in ways. What I've got defines me. I mean, I will, if I drop $1, it used to be a quarter, but it's gone up to $1 now. Somebody finds it, it's theirs. I'm not going to reach over and pick it up. If I got to go up the stairs again, I'm going, I really don't want to do that. I'll send poor Mrs. Davis up to find in my office. Then we send in the dogs to try to find her in that, the search teams. But there are a lot of things that I don't do and I can't do because I identify so much with the pain. That's it. Okay, but it doesn't own me, but it has to define me in some ways. What happens, though, and this person would do this, if they were coming along in their Moby and you were standing somewhere talking to someone and you didn't see them, I mean, you didn't. And these Mobies are quiet, and it's this, and you turned around and they're staring at you. You'll see them in the grocery store. Don't get. You could get out of my way, Sorry. That is an identity with their diagnosis and their disability. I don't have to be nice. I'm the one that's disabled. Get out of my way. Okay? And while the idea may be true, as a person that can walk, I can get out of their way more readily than they can get out of mine. When I'm not aware of their presence, and they think that you're supposed to have this radar, that you don't know, but the attitude behind it is telling you that they are identifying with that now. The same thing happens with mental illnesses and our mental diagnosis, I think especially of ADHD, especially because we have children, a generation growing up with that diagnosis, and guess what? They're now going, oh yeah, and we have adult ADHD. I get it. I mean, if you got ADHD, you got ADHD, but come on. Are we really going to play that game forever? It's the reason I'm not CEO of this company. I would have been, except I was, and we say it here so often, folks, you're either going to be a victim or you're going to be a victor. And the way that you're a victor is in Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ. This is one of the places, I think, where the foolishness of, you just get saved and go to heaven, that's not it. No, you get saved. You get saved from self. Because when you are doing this kind of thing, I'm living for my diagnosis, I'm living for, or I am not identifying with Christ. But I've got this. Okay, but it's no longer you who live, but it's Christ. Can you be a nice person with morals and with decent manners and this kind of thing, just because you're living with whatever it is that you've got? And you can. And autism is another one. That's huge. But you get people that are autistic. I've worked with them. They're not there. They're in a different reality often. they can't pay attention to things. And now that's the extreme. The autism, they don't know which came first, the mental retardation or the autism. Okay, but it's still there. And then you get people like that woman whose name I never can remember, but she thinks like a critter does. She is autistic. She has her PhD in animal husbandry. That would be PhD in animal husbandry from Texas A&M University. A&M, the A stood for agriculture, back when that was the beginning of it, the name. And she is in demand all over the place. But she's different. She'll tell you, I'm different than you are. And she thinks in her autistic way about things, and she does things that are odd, but she has refused to let it be her identity. In fact, it has become her laboratory in which she does all sorts of amazing things with these animals, and she talks their lingo. She understands. I'll give you a quick one of one of the things that she did. She would go home and she would be very upset, nervous, again, from these, and it'd be a hard day. And she found that when she would wrap herself up in a blanket very tightly, this is something, she would wrap up, that she would feel safe then, and she would start calming down. Now, this is really something. And you think about it, well, where would somebody, guess what? You do the same thing. When you're in mama's womb, then you rudely get ejected from that place, and suddenly everything's really stinky. Why am I out here? And what Mrs. Davis will tell you, when the baby is fussy, what do you do, Miss Davis? Miss Davis is a master at this. She does it to our dog. Wrap that thing up. And when a baby gets warm, when a boxer gets warm, Talitha will.
Yeah, if she's extra warm, if I put an extra blanket on her, she just snores so loud.
Oh my
she goes
goodness! You
such
can't
a
sleep in the
deep
next
sleep.
room. Talitha, you're a lady. You're not supposed to do it anyway. But when you get warm and wrapped up, you start feeling safe. Well, she said, because one of the things that happens in the slaughter of animals is they're afraid, and there's all this different stuff happening around them, and they get afraid. When they get afraid, their body systems begins to release steroids, fight or flight type thing. And so the steroids go into, and guess what? At the moment of their slaughter, in which they're going to be used for meat for people, they get full of steroids because they're afraid. And they're, and hollering about it. She said, why don't y'all come up with just a sling that they put around, and it just engulfed them. Not real tight or anything. It wasn't a controlling thing. It just, and all of the bawling and mooing and everything just went right down. And when they tested the creatures, on the other end of sorry you died, but the steroid thing and the meat was much better, and they began to adopt this all over the place. Large restaurant chains, McDonald's is one of them, that just what she says, that's what you do. She's done the same thing with chickens, dogs, all sorts. Not that you slaughter the dog, but it's fascinating stuff. She's not allowed her diagnosis to define her. She has taken that difference in her life. I don't want to call it a disability, but that difference in her life, and she's used it for something. But the problem is once we begin to identify with the diagnosis, we will use that as our excuse all along here. In fact, we'll develop more things along with it. Again, the point is the protection of the self. I wish that we would, this is, again, one of the great things about true Christianity is that you have this power that is in you, one that you can't explain. I don't know, it's just there. And your identity is in Christ. And the more that you take in Scripture, the more your identity is with Christ and not with the things around you in the world. And when Christ is in you, and this is one of the really glorious things about this, we've talked about this in roundabout ways, but it's like the kids that are home teached. It turns out that they are much better in social situations, even at a very young age. Why? Because they talk to adults all day. They don't just relate to the kids their age. And the lie of, well, they're not going to have socialization skills is exactly that. It's a lie. Because the kids learn to talk to people at all sorts of different ages, and they're not afraid of it. But the other thing that happens is a parent has stayed behind and is with that child. I mean, there's a reason that it takes them a while to grow up. They're with that child for many years, and that child feels very safe. This is a big thing. That child feels very safe because they know they're loved by that parent. Oh, and by the other one that goes to work so that that parent can stay home. And they get it. They get that. And so there is a confidence in social situations that the world would go, oh no, it's the other way around. They're losing out on these. So no, they actually are gaining in the ability to socialize, not losing in it. And the thing about it is no longer I who live, but Christ, and Christ liveth in me, etc., is that when he is inside me, and I'm seeking his face, and I'm in his presence a lot. When I'm out doing things like working or talking, etc., there is a boldness and a freedom in those things because I know I'm loved. Every time, I've told this before, but we used to, you're at work, and okay, we're going to do team testing today. No, not again. Come on, you don't have to. I'll just tell you. All the normal people in here, I'm out there, okay? And I'm by myself in another room. It's okay, because I am going to score in the introvert, way out there. And when people find out that as a child I was shy to the point, I don't even know. In today's world, they would have gone, let's give this kid some sort of diagnosis. Somebody looks at him and says hi, and he starts crying. It was, anyway. But the change that came over me when Yeshua came in was obviously drastic. Talking in front of people? No, that's not what I do. I don't. And I've got to have notes and everything else. But that's not what happened. Everything changed because of my Lord. It's what happened, and in an odd way, what I'm talking about right there is he saved me from me. Why would I be so shy and introverted? I was afraid I was going to get hurt. Okay, so you were going to, and here we go with Facebook, you were not going to like me. The fear of man was there. But when Yeshua came in, he began pulling me out of that more and more. Not that it's not there, but that Yeshua takes care of it. It's you don't have to fear. I'm here. Oh, that's right. And how he's changed my life so much. I identify with my diagnosis, but my diagnosis is Jesus Christ lives in me. That's the diagnosis. and everything changes. Your mouth changes, your tongue changes, the way you think, logic, the way you deal with people, the way you talk to it all changes. Why? Because no longer I live but Christ. I mean, this is where it gets down to. When these people are using their lives, their diagnosis to define themselves, this is not the time to pile on. If you just had Jesus, you'd be okay. I'll call you in a second here, but it's a time for understanding. This becomes a time where we as believers want to be able to give them. This is one of the things. When we talk about this, when we talk about counseling and stuff like that, all you have to do is listen. One of the things, if you would learn how to do it, to not be, okay, I'm going to give you my story that's along the same lines that you just said, but to just listen. And if you learn to listen, you're going to, within just a few minutes of meeting somebody, you are going to know what's going on with them. People love to do one thing, and that's talk about their favorite subject. And the favorite subject is themselves. Even when they fear it, they will be quick to let you know whatever is going on with them, whatever has happened to them in the past, all this type of stuff, so that you can come up with the picture they want you to have. But if you're listening close enough and the Lord is doing the listening for you, you can come up with the picture that Yeshua needs you to have for their salvation, to pull them into the kingship of God. You talk about salvation. Salvation is when God is the king. That's real salvation.